Let's start with the lead, which is Guido Vianello is fighting William Jolly, I think is his name. Jolly, I'm not sure. How exciting would it be for if this guy Jolly were to fight Big Nasty?
Well, just to pull the curtain back, you also sent me a video a couple of hours ago for one of a great heavyweight performance, and we were texting back and forth about the possibility of old Big Nasty. I know who. I'm surprised he wasn't on your list of favorite Australians. You're a massive Big Nasty fan, so.
But I'm worried he might run it into me. He takes guys. I still can't get over. That's the highlight of 2026 to me. Yeah, I'm gonna take this guy into deep waters, and I'm sitting here thinking, man, this guy has deep amateur pedigree. A couple of fights, and they go, okay, this is a 4-rounder, and then they have another like football player or rugby player in the crowd that comes out like an old school pro wrestling. So like he knocks a guy out, and he's like, I want to fight you next. Oh, I'm so into Big Nasty. It's one of my.
I know, mate. I'm so embarrassed by the whole rugby thing in Australian boxing, but I'm glad someone enjoys it and someone can see the entertainment value in it. I can't, but I'm glad you like it. So.
I want to do an interview with Big Nasty. I want to ask him about the waters he swims in. Like, I want to do a story about what kind of waters. Do you think they're like tough, deep, like 8 feet? Are they choppy waters, like very intense, but 3 feet? What do you think these waters that Big Nasty run?
Mate, I don't know. So I would certainly be tuning into that interview. But just the background, so this guy, I forget his actual name, but Big Nasty. Like, I'm not a rugby.
We gotta just call him Big Nasty. It's cooler than his name, probably.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm not a huge rugby guy. I don't really know many players except for the ones that cross over into boxing. But like, this guy is like a massive Australian sporting celebrity. Like, he's super well known. He's presumably, I'm assuming, like massively rich. Like, he's a hugely high profile, like sort of in the sports, pantheon in Australia. So, mate, if you could land an interview with Big Nasty, as comical as it is for us and as low profile as he is in boxing, in the wider sports world, he's a massive figure. So that would be one hell of a get for you, mate. And I wish you all the best. I would, for one, certainly be checking it out. That's for sure.
That's a bucket lister for me. Is me and Big Nasty a sit down? Maybe a walk and talk, just walk with him. And there's a huge size disparity, like a backstory why Big Nasty wanted to fight.
You should play golf with him. Play 9 holes with him, mate. All the worlds will come colliding. That'd be amazing.
Royal Melbourne, we got to combine wealth with a backstory, So, maybe I caddy for Big Nasty, hit a little alt shot with him. I like where this is going, but where we are now going is Nikita Tszyu and Ben Mahoney. Huge, strong opinions on the Substack, on my personal Substack. I have a sneaky big Australian, not fan, but reader listenership. There are strong opinions coming from this. First off, kind of refreshing. Nikita Tszyu goes, I think I lost, was his first take. What is your first take from this?
Yeah, well, my first take was it was specifically to Nikita's post-fight thoughts in the immediate aftermath is refreshing honesty, which we don't always get from fighters, and there's many reasons for that. But Nikita's always marched to the beat of his own drum. He's a quirky character. He's certainly and no one like him in Australian boxing. But in terms of the fight itself, mate, I thought it was really, really close. It finished about 11:30 last night Australian time, almost midnight. And I was on the phone. I had a chat to a mate of mine in boxing, Justin Westman. We were talking back and through, and we're like, mate, who do you thought won? Was the draw fair? And it was really close. And we'll get into the fight and the reasons for that, I'm sure, in the coming moments. But initially, straight after the fight, I thought it was super close. Gun to my head, I had to pick a winner. I probably would have gone Nikita. I haven't watched the fight back yet, but I thought sort of the story for me was Ben Mahoney kind of exceeding my expectations and Nikita underperforming in terms of my expectations to what I thought he was going to bring to the ring.
So what's the Australian stories coming away from this fight?
Mate, it's pretty controversial. A lot of people are thinking Ben Mahoney got robbed blind. A lot of people think probably I'm closer to this sort of opinion that Nikita was super hard on himself. It's kind of a little bit too early. As I mentioned, the fight ended almost midnight last night. I was up just got home from work today, so I haven't really had a lot of time to get on and sort of do a vibe check, as the kids would say, or whatever on the internet. But just from the interactions I've had with boxing fans, we all certainly thought it was close. And there seems to be some pretty forceful language coming from Team Mahoney and in his promoter, and in particular. And look, it's got all the hallmarks of, the storyline sort of set for an immediate rematch. Whether or not that's something No Limit want to do and, take Nikita in that direction, or if they want to kind of see if they can pivot and move on, we're going to have to sort of wait and see. At the moment, a little too early to tell, but if I had to take a guess, I would say the rematch is sort of there for the taking. It's a bigger fight now than the first one was, so kind of be silly not to, I think.
Business of boxing, boring bald guy with graves in his beard. Take. Is there an underlying Mick Francis, who's a promoter, George Rose kind of tension with the two promoters having fighters? Obviously, No Limit, George Rose had Nikita. Mick Francis, I believe, had Ben. Is that a partial storyline? And what should I know about that? Or is that not at all?
Yeah, to my knowledge, it's not. If there is any sort of hostility between the two promotional companies, it's certainly taken place predominantly behind closed doors. I haven't seen anything in the public sphere that would suggest that. Not to say that it hasn't happened. I just haven't seen it. I haven't been told about it. I think Mick Francis is a guy that kind of gets along with everyone, and as a small promoter has shown in the past that he's willing to work with everyone to get opportunities for his fighters. I've had my negative things to say about No Limit and the pay TV channel they're affiliated with in Australia, Main Event for sure, and I'll give them negative feedback when I think they deserve it, but I'll also give them positive feedback when I think they deserve it. And George Rose, to me, seems like he's always come across, I've never met him personally, but he has always come across as a nice guy, a respectful guy. He's worked with promoters in America, as you would know. He's worked with promoters in New Zealand. He's worked with promoters in the region down here. They seem like they'd be two guys that could work well together. In the aftermath of the fight last night, George Rose was interviewed in the ring and talk about, your
legendary post-fight interview. Basically, if you're booing, come see me out front.
Mate, I was expecting to wake up to some camera phone footage someone had posted of just a 30-man brawl out the front of just all these drunk fans going berserk at him or something. But you mentioned it with Big Nasty, it was like pro wrestling. It was the parallels to pro wrestling were unbelievable. But yeah, to answer your question, sorry for rambling. To my knowledge, there wasn't any hostility pre-fight, but it seems like there's cause for some post-fight hostility. So we'll have to see what happens in the future on that front.
Well, I guess the sentiment, because I watched the fight, but I watched it after I knew the result. And I always feel like you're skewed one way. And for me, I didn't really know who won. I felt as though, I'm going to say Ben, because I think I'm saying his last name wrong. Just going to say Ben. I felt as though he won the court of moral opinion or the underdog story. So even if it was a draw, there's a subsection of people that didn't expect him to fight that well, and that he was going to win a certain amount of people's scorecards, because it reminds me, here's a deep cut. Robert Guerrero, I felt like outboxed Aaron Martinez in an early PVC card, but because Guerrero got dropped by Aaron Martinez, a lot of people were like, dude, I thought Guerrero lost. And I remember thinking pretty clearly he won. It just wasn't a great performance. The big takeaway for me on this fight was I don't see Nikita Tszyu as a world champion. I don't see him really getting past this point. Maybe if they were to rematch. I think that the reason I bring up the two promoters is because I think there is a subsection of fan that might feel like if the lead promoter was for Ben, maybe he would have gotten the nod. Politics of boxing. I'm not saying that's what it is, but I feel like people are so worn down in boxing with decisions. Even with this weekend with Rolly Romero, majority decision, and not a lot of people agree with it. I wondered if that might play a factor. It sounds like it doesn't. But I leave this more so thinking Nikita Tszyu is probably never going to reach a world-class level. And this is probably the beginning of the end. Is that a good way for me to look at it, or talk me?
Yeah, I don't think it's an overreaction by you at all, Lukie. And you've got a very astute eye, and you've certainly seen things that I haven't been able to see in certain fighters in the past. I definitely thought it was a bit of a regression for Nikita, who's had a pretty rough time the last couple of fights. He's fought guys that he was clearly better than and got out really quick. There was the debacle with Zarafa, which we don't have to go over again. His last hit out after that, Oscar Diaz, he had a pretty dominant performance where I thought he got the blend between boxing and his aggressiveness really good. He also hit the guy when he was on the floor and the ref did nothing about it, which was horrible. We'll get into the officiating later, possibly, which the Australian officiating is really lacking badly at the moment, I feel, but that's a whole different topic for another day, possibly. But and then in this fight now, I was expecting to see Nikita continue with what he showed us in that Oscar Diaz performance of really blending his boxing and his aggressiveness much better, which is what he was as an amateur. He was a slick southpaw. He wasn't this, hulking brute that he is now, that, licking blood off his gloves and all these type of things. This was a more the maturing of Nikita. It sort of happened later in his life and development as a fighter, this sort of aggressive streak that he's been on. So in terms of that, I thought this was actually a regression for Nikita. He essentially completely abandoned the jab for the first 9 rounds, it seemed like to me. He wasn't setting anything up correctly. He was trying to force everything. And I understand Mahoney is an awkward guy. He comes from a kickboxing background. He was a convert to boxing later in life, so he does things a little bit differently. But even still, I thought it was certainly a regression for Nikita. Now, he is 28 years old. He's only had 13 fights, to your point. So they've kind of got to get him moving. Otherwise, he's in that zone where he could completely miss his prime and not get to where No Limit want to push him to, which is that world level. But does he have the pure talent to get there? I think we've seen flashes of it in the past. Is his inability to be able to put that into a performance at least regional level now due to his lack of experience? I think it may be, but the way they've positioned him headlining pay-per-views in Australia, it's hard to keep him active and hard to get him in with, to sell those fights for the next rung up the ladder. I think the platform they've put him on has really hurt his career development. But again, to wrap all that in a bow, is he finished and done? I'm a biased Australian. I'm going to remain hopeful. I don't think so. I think he can turn it around, but I think they're running out of time too. Like, if he's going to put it all together and go on a run, it's got to be now.
President of the U.S., Ike from Pluto Fan Club checking in. Thank you, Gail, for tuning into this live stream right now. This is the Sicko podcast for only Australian boxing fans. So we do appreciate you tuning into this last minute chat that whoever watches will watch. I guess another thing I want to ask is, how many pay-per-views have happened this year in Australia?
A lot. Yeah. So No Limit exclusively a pay-per-view company. I broke it down on one of my shows a couple of months ago. I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but from 2023, 24, 25 and into 26, each year they've done less shows, and each year they've done less free shows and more pay-per-views, to the point where in 26 they've only held pay-per-view events in Australia, which I'm glad it was available globally in DAZN. It was $70 in Australia on pay-per-view or last night, and all their other pay-per-views this year. So yeah, mate, it's an epidemic. I've ranted about it on my show a lot. I think people are sick of me talking about it, but I think and globally too, that the whole pay-per-view thing is out of control. But more specifically to us in Australia, it's really bad, mate. It's hindering the growth of the sport horribly. I think the sport could be so much bigger. I think the fighters could be attracting so many more sponsors. I think they could be more active. I think there could be so many more positive things that would result from putting the sport in front of more eyeballs. But for whatever reason, the powers that be have no interest in that. But yeah, mate, it's pretty sorry state of affairs down here. Like, Matchroom have been down, put on a couple of free shows, which has been great. Tasman, Ben Mahoney's promoter, they kind of are on a free platform, but you have to be a subscriber and then subscribe to the sports section of that subscription platform as well. So it's kind of a cheaper pay-per-view. But yeah, we're trending in the wrong direction in Australia, mate, but we seem to be following the lead globally because everything is just ending up on pay-per-view now.
Well, and this, I did a once a week pod, my mailbag kind of thing, about like we had a podcast this week, right? Or not a podcast, but we have a podcast every week. We had a pay-per-view this week with Rolando Romero versus Teofimo Lopez. Me personally, not a pay-per-view fight, a very good fight. They didn't fight like a pay-per-view fight. At least this fight, I don't think it should have been on pay-per-view, but at least it had the urgency of a pay-per-view fight. That's a big thing to me about it. If you're going to charge money, we need the urgency to make it feel like, okay, this is bigger than you think. Oh, and by the way, Moses Atuma, real interesting fighter. Guess what? Pay-per-view. It's supposed to be a step-up fight. It's not even one of these. Yes, it's a title fight, but it's behind there. You said the thing that I'm thinking now, which is we need to grow boxing. We're at a point where we got to grow boxing. And I don't understand, like, from an Australian perspective, what is the growth with boxing where you are? Do you see young people talk about it?
No, no. If anything, it's receded. I think, and funnily enough, to this point, there's a guy called Kane Pittman. I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here. He's an Australian who works for ESPN in Connecticut, in America, and he covers the NBA and has a lot to do with our National Basketball League down here, the NBL. And the NBL, just to be really quick, about 12 years ago was completely down and out. The league was almost had to fold. It was financially bankrupt, all these things. A bloke came in, Larry Kesselman, invested tons of money, and now the league is arguably a top 5 league in the world. We've got Cole Anthony's playing for Melbourne United this season, just about to start. We've had, the LaMelo Ball and stuff come out here, forego college and play in Australia. The league in 10 years has been built unbelievably well. It's got a great TV deal with ESPN in Australia and also some games on free to air. And I've sort of sat back as kind of a quasi basketball fan and a boxing hardcore. And I'm watching the growth of the NBL in the last 10 years and how every year it's getting more fans and going to games and seeing families and 10,000 seat arenas being filled up multiple times a week for this sport that was down and out 10 years ago. And I'm looking at boxing and it's going in the complete opposite direction in terms of growth. I'm thinking, why is that? And I had Kane on and he explained the rise of the NBL and the steps they took to gain that visibility and that growth and all those type of things. And I've sort of come to the same conclusion as you recently, Lukie, that for growth, you have to be able to put the sport in front of the most eyeballs possible. If you're hiding it behind paywalls, it's never going to be able to grow into what its potential could be. And it's a shame. The reason has to be financial. None of these big power players are showing me their books or accounts and the reasons why and their profit and losses and all those type of things. So us on the outside, we're forced to guess and assume things, but it's a shame because the sport could be so much bigger, mate. I'm not sure if you have a more sort of locked in, more informed theory than I do, mate. But yeah, it's a bit of a heartbreaker.
Gail in the chat, it's the way of the world. Atuma Hrgovic shouldn't be on pay-per-view. You want the public invested in a heavyweight, if nothing else. Only $59.99 to the US. I mean, to me, this is just laughable. It's like Atuma, it's like, here's one of the most interesting fighters out heavyweight. You want to see him, okay, spend $60 in a bad economy. That's basically what they're saying. The economy is not great. Spend $60. Teofimo, you've heard of him. Rolly, spend some money. Nikita Tszyu, the Tszyu last name. You've seen his brother fight. You've seen some of his fights. Spend some money. Eventually, people aren't going to spend money, and they're going to miss something. So I assume the sport right now is watched as much through social media clips and reels as it is in watching real fights.
Yeah, mate, I've done it myself with some of the Australian fights because I'm just so fed up with. Look, obviously, I'm biased to my own country, and but it's the thing that I'm the most passionate about, and the thing that I get the most angry about because I'm so passionate about it. But I've done the same thing, mate. I've foregone buying some no limit pay per views just because none of them are worth pay per view. Not a single one of them. It's ridiculous. I disagree with the model. I disagree with the strategy, the business strategy behind it. I think there's only 2 reasons to do pay per view for me, and I could be wrong on this, but one is greed. And 2 is necessity. It's greed or necessity, and both are bad for different reasons.
My internet went down, so I don't know what I missed. Hopefully that was interesting, but now I'm in a different location.
That's all right, mate. Freshen things up. Perfect.
Yeah, I switched it up on you. What did I miss on this undercard? I didn't see a single thing, so give me the breakdown.
Yeah, so the co-main event was Callum Peters fighting a guy called Blake Wells. I'm sure you and most people watching this would be familiar with Callum Peters, Commonwealth Games silver medalist. I thought he got robbed against Oral Bay in the last Olympics in the first round. I thought he won that fight. Oral Bay went on to win the Olympic silver medal. Callum was 8-0 or 9-0, I believe, heading into this fight. Blake Wells, a really good domestic level fighter, 13-2. He'd lost to the same guy twice, Tej Singh, which, to give you context, Lukie, Tej Singh was Max McIntyre's second last fight, and Max McIntyre stopped him in the 10th round in what I think to this point in time is Max McIntyre's best performance, and was great matchmaking at the time. So that was Blake Wells' only loss, was 2 decisions to Tej back-to-back in 2023. And Blake, in his second to last fight, actually beat Andre Mikhailovic, who not long ago fought Janabek, I'm going to butcher this last name, Alim Kanuli, in Sydney in what was a real weird fight week. Janabek flew in only a couple of days out, beat the absolute crap out of Mikhailovic, and got on the plane and took off in a weird mandatory sort of situation. But Blake Wells is a quality operator, a pretty tidy southpaw, was a good amateur, had a lot of amateur experience, 13-2 coming into the fight. And Callum Peters ran through this guy, bashed him from pillar to post. How Blake Wells never went down from the insane body attack that Callum Peters put on him, I do not know. That's a credit to his toughness and his willingness to stick in there. But Callum Peters got the stoppage in the 8th round. I thought it was a good stoppage from the ref. And this year we've had Callum Peters has already had 4 fights. He had a fight with an East Timorese fella that he got rid of rather easily. Had the fight with Joson James, which to this date is still Callum Peters' best opponent, I thought. And as you pointed out to me on a previous time we were speaking, Lukie, Joson didn't get a full preparation for that camp, which would explain a few things. I'd love to see a rematch with a full 12-week camp from Joson down the track. But Callum Peters was able to get the 10-round decision there after an early knockdown, or he knocked down Joson James early. The fight after that, he fought a really crafty, tricky, awkward southpaw, 13-0 Ivan Actis, only a month ago, and stopped him in 7 rounds rather dominantly. And now Blake Wells, another more conventional southpaw, he fought 4 weeks later. And the whole thing with Callum Peters is he's got this reckless, aggressive style. He throws with tons of volume. It's a little bit David Benavidez-esque. It's a little bit reckless. There's certainly a lot of career development that he needs to make on the defensive side to get to the world level that the promoters are spruiking him to get to rather quickly. But I thought there actually was a definitive improvement from the fight 4 weeks ago with Ivan Actis to this one with Blake Wells. He toned down the volume a little bit, and he certainly got caught. He got hit. There's no doubt about that. His defense needs to get better, but he was actually catching, blocking, and rolling the shots a hell of a lot better than he was with Joson or he was with Ivan Actis. So I guess that's what we want to see out of our young prospects. We want to see activity, which he's certainly giving us, and we want to see career progression. We want to see the holes being shortened, the defensive responsibilities being tightened up, the defensive awareness being rampant. And I think we saw that in only 4 weeks. So I think if Callum had it his way, he'd fight another 2 times this year. Will that happen? Definitely going to see him at least 1 more time, possibly 2. And I want to see this, sort of opposite to Nikita. I thought it was a little bit of a regression. I'm hoping, and I'm really confident that we will see this progression continue with the activity that Callum Peters has applied in 2026 so far. So exciting prospect, still a long way to go, but for us, it's someone to certainly follow and have a bit of hope in from a fan perspective.
Okay, as we always say, Jai Opetaia update. He's got a fight coming up in September 12th. He's had 1 Zuffa boxing bout. Really wasn't as exciting as it should have been. What are the hopes on his second Zuffa fight?
Well, my hopes on the second Zuffa fight, Lukie, are that the fight actually takes place. You probably know more than I do, but when Don King's involved and he hasn't been involved in the negotiations, crazy things can happen, during fight week or a couple of days out from the fight. So I saw, shout out to Abraham Gonzalez, from Fights Around the World. He put something out just a couple of hours ago that, Don King alluded to the fact that there could be something coming up, and apparently Zuffa, according to him, are looking for alternative opponents. So is that anything that you've heard with your boots on the ground in the US, Lukie? Are you confident this fight sort of takes place, or what's your stance on it?
Been kind of largely uninterested this summer. There haven't been enough fights that have made me want to make phone calls in that regard. And I'm more drawn to the undercard fighters, if I'm being honest. I don't know. I know that everyone that's seen Jai in Vegas says he's one of those top-notch guys. And they love his mentality. They love his work. It just feels like his career should be so much better. The start of 2025, it felt like he was going to be Matchroom's guy, and he just didn't get enough fights that year. And now we're in 2026, and it feels like he was the first big Zuffa signing, and now he's on the back burner. Other guys, Ben and Shakur, it doesn't seem as he's not as at the forefront. So I just hope that he gets his recognition.
Yeah, mate, certainly we do too over here. And yeah, to your point, and it's weird for an undefeated guy and a guy that should still be a world champion. And again, that's a whole nother can of worms. But, like Jai's already sort of weirdly in the prime of his career, but also falling into the category of what if, for those reasons that you outlined. Like, but what could his career have been if he hadn't have run into all these out of the ring issues? It's it's such a shame. I'm just hoping he can course correct and it can all sort of fall into place and all this sort of hardship and all the hurdles were worth it. But yeah, so to go back to your original question, like what do we make of this fight potentially against Noel Michaelian? It's like, well, mate, I'll be surprised if it happens at this point. Like I have no confidence that it's actually going to take place. So we'll have to wait and see.
Outsider looking in, knowing you for about a year, seems like your enthusiasm on Jai's career is kind of dimmed since last year. Like around fall holiday season last year, it seemed like you were very excited. Now, end of summer, you're kind of like, man, you're almost like regretful speaking about it. Is that a true perception, or what do you think?
Yeah, mate, I couldn't disagree with that observation whatsoever. I've openly been a bit of a critic of Zuffa just in general, and I just never be the guinea pig. I just cannot imagine what the reason was for Jai to be the guinea pig and be the first one that signed with them. Financial, it's got to be. Hopefully, he got millions and millions and millions of dollars and set up his whole family for generations. I genuinely hope that. I really do, but. Yeah, to me, from the outside looking in, the play seemed to be stay with Matchroom. Now Matchroom have a deal with Fox Sports Australia and Main Event, which is the same broadcaster that No Limit are with. He could have been their flagship guy. They could have built him into a legitimate, actual star here in actual deserving pay-per-views with a world title wrapped around his waist. Now he has none of that. I don't know. Again, I'm not involved in the backroom dealings with his manager and his promoter. There has to be reasons for these things, but from, sitting on my couch, with a beer in my hand, I don't know what they are, so I can't really comment on it. But in terms of, career momentum, it's absolutely plummeted, and it's shocking to see. It's horrible to see because, Jai, I think, is our best fighter by absolutely no doubt. Like this guy's been a prodigy. We've known about, like, the first time I heard Jai Opetaia's name was in 2010. I was training at a gym and it happened to be the state coach of the amateur team from Victoria, where I live in Australia. And he went to the nationals that weekend and he comes in on the Monday and he goes, "Oh my God, guys, remember this name, Jai Opetaia," who at the time was like 16, just bashing grown men at the national championships. And so Jai's been an absolute freak of nature prodigy for basically his entire life. And us in Australia, we always knew, like, he was the guy we were always most confident was going to get to the top. Yeah, we had the Jeff Horns in between. Yeah, we had the George Camboses and all those type of things. But Jai was the one we all had circled on our list. We knew he was going to get there. And, he's got so much potential and so much ability. And then, out of the ring managerial issues, and he's already been sued by a former promoter back in Australia and a couple of years ago, which held him back. And just all these things outside of the ring are stopping him from fulfilling his potential and being able to get into the zone where he does his best work, which is in the ring, and I'm sure no one's as frustrated as he is. But yeah, mate, I guess your read for my mood is spot on. It's frustrating and disappointing.
Teremoana Jr. He reminds me of George Foreman. What's the excitement level for him?
Well, again, mate, within the boxing circles, I guess it's pretty high. I mean, he's fought absolutely no one yet, so it's hard to tell. He's got the greatest hype machine on the planet behind him in Eddie Hearn, which can only be a good thing. But he's got to fight a live body. and we're going to find out. He's got to fight someone that's going to throw punches back at him. We've got to see him get hit. We saw him fight Jalolov in the amateurs. He wasn't able to sort of climb that hurdle. It doesn't look like Jalolov's going to be the force in the pros that he was in the amateurs. So does that mean anything? I don't really know. I think heavyweight's the hardest. Well, for me, heavyweight is definitely the hardest division to get a read on, that's for sure. And anything can happen with one punch, and the guy's huge, and he can certainly has the ability to deliver that one punch and change a fight, on a dime. So we're going to see. But my fear, going back to what we were talking about earlier, is, Eddie Hearn and Matchroom have signed this 7-fight deal with Foxtel and Main Event, which is the pay-per-view arm of Fox Sports in Australia. And their deal was for 3 free-to-air shows and then 4 pay-per-views, which is insane. Like, as if they have the roster in Australia for that. They've already had two free shows. I think the goal, this is just my personal theory. I've not heard anything behind the scenes. I think the next time we see Teremoana fight in Australia, they're going to make him a pay-per-view headliner. And he's 11-0 with 11 knockouts and has fought no one. So, yeah, I don't know. We're going to have to see, mate. It's really hard for me. Sorry, I'm rambling, but it's really hard for me because I'm so biasly Australian to sort of sometimes step back and have like a really even keel look at it. So I'm trying to imagine from like an international perspective, the things I would say, be like, yeah, big dude, looks like some potential, but fought no one. So the jury's still out.
I'm pretty high on him. I thought he beat Jalolov in the Olympics. Really confused why he hasn't fought anyone. I think he's good enough to fight people, to be honest with you. I think he could be in fights. Are you thinking what I'm thinking, though?
Yeah, well, if what you're thinking is get him in with someone that's can go 4 or 5 rounds with him, or even 10 rounds or whatever, and in with a live body that's going to punch him back and be able to stand up to the initial power, yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I'm thinking he needs to go to some deep waters. And him and Big Nasty.
I wasn't picking up like
pay-per-view quality fight to me.
Mate, you're gonna fly down if that happens.
I might. If Big Nasty gets a payper-view fight, I've always wanted to go to Australia, and that might be a great excuse, is to go see. I'd be, look, I like Teremoana, but that I'd be part of Big Nasty's team. I'm gonna be there with a shirt.
It is so unbelievable to me, Lukie. Like, you are, definitely one of the most hardcore boxing guys I've ever met. And I just cannot believe how much you love Big Nasty.
I love Big Nasty.
He's got to send you some merch. We got to get some Big Nasty merch for you, mate.
I just want to do the Big Nasty interview. It's like I'm the only U.S. media that gets to do Big Nasty interviews, and I just ask him all softball questions like, what punch are you going to knock him out with? Like a uppercut or a left hook? We know you're good at both of those. I remember someone did that to Gervonta Davis in front of me. They're like, are you going to land an uppercut for this fight? And he like smiles and goes, maybe. And I'm like, are we really asking Gervonta Davis? Like, the question we're going to get is, what punch? Like, are you going to land the uppercut on him? And he's just like, oh, man, that was a special era of boxing media. Just like to show up and get a press credential and get to meet your favorite fighter and ask him a question. It's like a fan Q&A mixed in with paid media members. That was really and then that was when Hector Luis Garcia fought him. And like Hector Luis Garcia, like nobody has a question for him. It's like only the real media guys can interview him. But then Tank's there and you got a bunch of cell phones and stuff. And guys are like, so Tank, what do you think of this new rap album? Pretty good, right? Gonna walk out to it? Like, oh man, that's special. So that's the kind of questions I want to ask.
Well, your dream, Lukie, has now become my dream. My boxing dream is to see the Big Nasty Lukie boxing interview. I would love nothing more.
Can Australia get behind me and I can be brought in by the network as the only person to interview Big Nasty? So like only like I'm like Big Nasty's interview person, but I don't talk with any other fighters, and it's like assumed. So it's like, okay, this is Lukie here with Big Nasty. And like there's no explanation why I'm there, but I'm just the person that does the vignette with Big Nasty.
Mate, what did Deontay Wilder say? Speak it, believe it, achieve it. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm if Big Nasty ever lost, I mean, I might have to do like a eulogy for his boxing career. Like there's certain
Well,
guys.
start writing it, mate, because I don't think he's that far away from a loss. But
Well, I mean, if they put him in with Teremoana, I don't think that's going to be a. I think that's going to be a pretty big step up. But hey, what do they always say in those MMA boxing matchups? Well, what if he lands? What if he lands? Like McGregor Mayweather. What if the punch lands? So maybe I can say that. Liam Paro, he's an interesting fighter. He's a champion. I feel like he's an undersized champion that basically every relevant welterweight is calling out. I've heard he might be fighting George Kambosos. I don't think that's much of a. Have you heard anything? And what are the thoughts on Paro?
yeah, I've heard that rumor, which would break my heart. George has done absolutely nothing he didn't deserve the shot against Richardson Hitchens. How does he deserve a shot up another weight class against Liam Paro? But Australia, I guess all small markets are, slightly obsessed or massively obsessed and fixated. If they have two people from the same country fight for a world title, they'll just move heaven and earth to make it happen. So it actually wouldn't shock me. It would be, certainly undeserving, but it's not like boxing's known for its meritocracy or anything like that. But as I understand it, I believe the winner of the Liam Paro Crocker fight had to defend against Paddy Donovan anyway, didn't they?
Paddy Donovan, I interviewed today.
Oh.
Video on the same YouTube channel. This is going to be uploaded shortly.
Okay.
He took a step aside bout to fight at Croke Park against Tyrone McKenna to be the first two Irishmen to fight at Croke Park in over 100 years. So Paddy Donovan's taking a step aside to do an Irish history fight.
Right. So that relieves Paddy Donovan of that mandatory position for Liam, does it?
So, he's just taking a fight because he wants to fight in Ireland, but he's still going to be the mandatory. Okay. And I really like Paddy Donovan. He's probably one of my favorite interviews. He's up there with Big Nasty.
Wow, high praise.
The Paddy Donovan thing that I love is I never fully can tell if it's Paddy Donovan because his hairstyle changes so dramatically. One time he'll have cornrows, one time he'll have his hair slipped back. Today he had yellow hair. It's I don't know. As a bald guy, I'm kind of envious. But then, when I had hair, I was very uptight, and I'm oh, I don't want to change anything. And it's it's pretty bold to just be okay, because your hair is part of your identity. And then Paddy's just whatever, cornrows, blonde hair, and then he's basically I just do it to upset my wife. And I mean, I think he's pretty juiced excited to fight in Ireland. So if Paro were to fight during this period, I think he could get away with a fight or do a voluntary, since Donovan's fighting in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. That we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't mind any unification for Liam at the moment. I don't think they're unwinnable fights. To your point, Liam wasn't the most physical guy at 140 pounds. He was certainly more physical. At 147, he seems to be, looks like he can be sort of ragdolled around a little bit, and he really has to rely on that boxing skill. And something I didn't really like seeing, those veteran tactics. He likes to clinch a lot. I think he rabbit punches too much, if I'm being totally honest. I really want to see that ironed out of his game. I know that's not in his character. Maybe that's more of sort of a survival mechanism up at 147 fighting bigger guys. But yeah, I mean, he's only had two fights at the weight. The David Papo fight, it was rough. I don't know if you saw that. His eye was completely
David
closed.
Papo is one of the craziest dudes to fight because everyone looks at him and thinks he's an old guy who's going to be bad. And then he comes and he can fight.
Yeah. And if that fight with Liam Paro was in another country, Liam Paro gets stopped. His eye was completely closed for 8 rounds. In some horrible Australian officiating and bias officiating, they just let it go, and Liam squeaked out a win there. But that was a tough fight for Liam. He didn't handle the size and the physicality of Papo, who also isn't a puncher, that well. He didn't fight very good either. I didn't think, Liam. But and then in his next fight with Lewis Crocker, the physicality and the strength of Crocker was certainly an issue. Another close fight. So
great fight though.
great fight, absolutely, and deserve a win of Liam Paro. But I think Liam would actually stylistically, it would probably be better to be in with a guy like Teofimo Lopez, who also hasn't carried that power up from 135 that he had. Didn't stop anyone at 140, 147. He doesn't like to be the biggest puncher. And, Liam was based in Las Vegas with Steve Rollins, I think, at his gym, DLX Boxing or something like that, for about 2 years, maybe 3. And he sparred all those guys. He sparred Shakur, he sparred Devin Haney. And he's super confident. He shared the ring with him, and he's confident he can beat him. I think stylistically, Liam's going to be far better off in a boxing match than in sort of a rough physical contest with a rugged guy that can really assert that physicality on him, which I don't think Devin's sort of that sort of style, and I think Teofimo is either. So, but probably the thing that's going to be most likely, because Australian boxing is going to Australian box, is what you pointed out early. Paddy Donovan's fighting in Ireland, which I actually didn't know about. So thanks for letting me know about that, Lukie. But yeah, so it seems to open the doors for George Kambosos to seemingly get another undeserved title shot. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
Well, hopefully it's on pay-per-view, because since it's not a scintillating matchup off the dribble, putting it on pay-per-view just would really make it worthwhile.
Yeah. Mate, they will sell the hell out of that, Oh, former undisputed lightweight world champion, 2 Australians fighting for a legitimate world title. Oh my God, I can see it
The
now.
first time in 50 years 2 welterweight Australians will have fought. Yeah, just I can already see it now. Next one, Tim Tszyu. Any thoughts after beating Errol Spence, which I would describe that fight as sad more than like a big win. Where does he go from here? Because there's really strong rumors that Erislandy Lara is not going to fight Tim Tszyu next. I'm not totally sure where he's going to fight, but I'm hearing his next fight is probably going to be in the U.S.
Yeah, I think there's strong rumors of Jamal Charlo. I think Jamal came out and said he wanted to fight Tim, or his next fight is going to be Tim. Whether or not that happens, who knows? But yeah, I think last time we spoke was in fight week before Spence Tszyu. So we haven't spoken about it in the aftermath. But yeah, it was a weird fight, wasn't it? I remember you asking me, is this going to be a good fight? And I was like, yeah, I think so. Both aren't what they once were, but sometimes that means the fight's going to be more exciting than it would, and they have to take more chances than they normally would. I don't think either guy really took much chances at all. Like, Tim was very passive, fought well within his capabilities. He barely jabbed. His output was certainly low. He just sort of seemed to try and get in front of Spence and use that physical pressure in front of him to kind of stifle Spence's output, which Spence didn't look good. Credit to him for going 12 rounds. But yeah, I just kind of, sad is a great word to put it, Lukie. Can Tim recapture those, the momentum and the heights that he briefly had a couple of years ago? I mean, Jeff Fennick, his new trainer, is taking it as a gigantic win, has come out in the media in the aftermath and said that there is absolutely tons more potential for Tim. He only showed, 30% of what they've been working on the gym and all that type of thing. But, Tim's 31. I think might even be close to 32. Gone through multiple trainer changes. He's been absolutely flogged and KO'd multiple times now. You mentioned earlier about Nikita maybe seeing the level and being a bit shot. I'm more optimistic on what Nikita's can still, achieve in his career than his brother Tim can regain it. I don't know. What were your thoughts, mate?
Just feels like people are kind of done with Tim. I know that sounds harsh, but it just feels like they used to have fire that said Tszyu in the walkouts, and he'd fight guys like Tony Harrison, and it was a big deal. And he just kind of looks like a guy that's trying to recapture that energy, but doesn't have the same durability and kind of doubts himself. There was like a level of invincibility he once had. And now I think he's almost in a second era, but it's like an era he shouldn't be a part of. It's like the guys in their mid-30s are fighting Tim Tszyu because he seems vulnerable enough where if they have a good night, they can restart their career. And it's weird that a guy potentially near his prime is almost like the gatekeeper for the old PBC fighters who are debating about if they want to retire.
Yeah, mate, I think that's a spot on read. Absolutely. It's yeah, he's getting to be a hard sell. Like, I would love to know the pay-per-view numbers in Australia, which they never release, because what's the best way of controlling a narrative? Don't release any facts publicly, and then you can just create whatever story you want. So apparently the Spence Zoo pay-per-view was an absolute outrageous success, but we'll never be able to see the numbers behind that. But yeah, I think your read's spot on, mate. People have seen the vulnerabilities in Tim multiple times now for years. Now they're like, yeah, I like my chances of going over there and getting a fair shake, hopefully with the refs and the officiating over here, which is, as I alluded to before, was really bad. Currently, really bad. If I was an overseas fighter, I would not come to Australia at the moment. No way known. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I guess my enthusiasm of talking about him has certainly waned as well. I'm kind of not to have guilt you for the question, but I'm just sort of like over him. I just want to see if he can do it or not, and if he can't, move on to the next.
Well, it just seems like he consumes a lot of like social media and content. And Gail in the chat, who doesn't love some big nasty? Get that interview, Lukie. We still have fans asking questions, except now they're called influencers. Virgil Ortiz said to be targeting Jermel Charlo in an all Texas fight. And that was a curiosity factor in Zoo Spence that drove some solid numbers. I mean, it just seems like Zoo kind of has a shtick. He was the soul taker. He kind of says things like in a very intense way that he thinks is going to resonate cool, but it kind of comes off as cringy. He's got a very outspoken coach where you feel like if he has the inevitable hard fight, it's not Jeff's fault. You can almost see that because he's like talking way too much, that there's going to be that Tim didn't listen to me. I'm totally like the best coach ever. It's not like a super likable ride to be on. And to mix it with he's not just laying it on the line anymore because there's possible durability issues. I think that's kind of how I.
Mate, I think your read there is absolutely spot on, mate. Absolutely spot on. And yeah, that's how Jeff rolls. But if he ever sees this, he will fight you and I, George Rose style, out the front of the building. Like, he is an aggressive guy. I have it on good authority that he lets people know what's up still to this day, if you know what I'm saying. So
But I mean,
we
like,
will be on
that's
his
an
list for
issue.
sure. But
But
yeah,
that's an issue, right? Because it's like you're the leader of the ship, and it's like you're taking fights on a public platform. We're in a dwindling industry. Basically, this is a hardcore enthusiast, American-based boxing channel where there was a great moment of Australian boxing. So we're going to give people that are curious about Australian boxing the highest level. When we want the highest level, we get Zack or we get Anthony Cox. Those are the highest level of Australian boxing, right? And then to have someone leading the ship to be like, I hate you. We're gonna whatever. And it's like, it's kind of a red flag, right?
yeah,
Because the tone set by a trainer sets the maturity of the camp. And Tim isn't like, Tim has a lot of like macho bravado that I've always felt. So I don't know if that's like always the most helpful to have someone that's like, I don't agree with you. I'm going to give you a stern talking to or whatever. That makes Tim's career even more concerning because I think that Tim at this point needs to focus on longevity and how can I get the most out of my career and possibly the most out of my health. And that seems like there's a lot of ego involved in that.
yeah. I think you're again spot on, Lukie, with your observations there for sure. And I think Tim's a victim of the promotional and the network. What the work and what they've built him into. I don't know what the right word is there, but my greater point being, like, from a very, very early part of his career, he was an Australian pay-per-view star, in quotation marks, like whatever that means. How can he be an Australian pay-per-view star? It's insane. But he has been, and he's had the sport on his shoulders, and the networks and the promoters have put the sport and the responsibility on his shoulders, and he's carried it. And I think he's, in moments like post-fight, especially when the emotions are raw and he says these crazy, like you said, macho style things, I've never sort of really gravitated towards his personality. It's always come off very cringy and very fake to me, but as his career has progressed and as he's continued to have all this pressure and the responsibility on his shoulders, he's sort of fallen into that character a little bit, I think. And maybe it's changed him mentally, maybe he started to believe all his own hype and all those type of things. And, I think it's a pretty big cross to bear. And, sometimes it can work for you and sometimes it can take it away. Like to me, the people that I look towards as like the heart and soul of Australian boxing are Andrew and Jason Moloney. Like you would never see them speak the way Tim speaks. They're just 100% gentlemen before, during, and after. Like I think they're the best role models we've got for the sport in this country. But again, they're a little bit older. Tim's kind of the next generation down. The TikTok age, they do things a bit differently. Everyone wants clicks, attention, likes, all this stuff. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I think your observations are right. I agree with you. I think we're roughly the same age. I'm 38. So that sort of attention grabbing stuff is kind of, I feel like is a younger person thing. Maybe I'm being a bit of an ageist, but it certainly doesn't win me over. But yeah, I just want to see him do well in the ring. Not even that. I just want to see him be able to give what he has left to the sport. And hopefully that's to a high level, as I'm a biased Aussie. But if it's not, he's made a ton of money and got a ton of notoriety down here and he can sail off into the sunset. But yeah, as far as the Tim Tszyu train goes, I think we're coming into the last stop or two now. So won't be long before we find out what he's got left.
And I saved my favorites for the last, the Moloney brothers. Obviously Tony Tolles is someone that I think the world of, but the Maloneys are people that I've been doing interviews with for probably 7 years now. And I was always struck by their professionalism. Never once did they complain about coming to America to fight in America. They came and accomplished goals. I don't even understand how to normalize that flight. And that's like the underrated part of their journey is they did that flight so many times, never really complained, okay, we're going to be away from home, because they had this dream of boxing stardom. And I think to me currently, they are the voice of Australian boxing. When I look to see what makes sense, I look at the Moloney brothers to kind of give me a read on Australian boxing.
Yeah, well, to the hardcores, man, I'm rapt to hear that, Luke, and you've done great work with them. Yeah, as you pointed out, for a number of years. I think they're the flag bearers, or they certainly should be. If you're a parent of a young kid who wants to get into boxing, I would be not looking at Tim Tszyu. I'd be looking at Andrew, Jason Moloney, and going, do what they do.
And Big Nasty.
and big nasty for sure. But yeah, I agree, mate. And also, it's got to be pointed out that when they were traveling back and forth to the US so much, it was during COVID. They were having to do 2-week quarantines on the way back as well after they fought individually, set in separate rooms and all that type of thing. And the teams, it was crazy the sacrifices they made. And to your point, you never hear them complain. Ultimate professionals. It's like they got a bolt through their neck and their head can only go up and down. It can't go sideways. They just say, yes, who do you want to fight? Yep, no worries. Nakatani, not a problem. Send me out, coach. I thought Angelo had to let him down.
I was in the gym when he was prepping for that.
Oh, no way.
I was in the gym because story time with Uncle Lukie begins.
Please.
Now. I love so this. Oh God, I'm going to get the brothers wrong. One of the brothers, I think it was Jason, was fighting for a belt, and he was fighting a Sean Gibbons fighter who was a Filipino that Nakatani ended up not. Vincent Astrolabio. And Sean Gibbons described him as a puncher brawler to me, which was a great description because that's the nice way of saying, yeah, well, he's not a technician. I remember that always stood out. What did I know? And he says he's a puncher brawler, or maybe brawler puncher, but it was like a nice way of saying, well, he's got to land something. So I get there, and obviously there's the guys, right? Joe Sean James fought on that card. He fought Javier Martinez. He's a guy that I know. Ruben Villa was there, and typical Ruben Villa, not unlike a Maloney's. It's Ruben Villa and Maloney's. They are there 15 minutes early because why would they show up late? They're in the hotel. It's at this Great Wolf Lodge, which is a really kind of a neat hotel. And Tony's like, and by the way, backstory was, I forget how it was, but I ended up talking to one of the gym guys and was like, hey, you should go by Steve Solis's gym, Stockton PYA. It's one of my favorite in Stockton. And Sam Garcia, one of my close buddies, had already set that in place for the Moloney brothers to go there, and they had Manny Jaimes and stuff. So it was the first time, and then Tony invited me. So I was already thinking about going by, and then Tony's like, come to the gym, come to the gym. And I was expecting I was going to have to drive people because it was like a jaunt. And we went in, and that was one of the only times that I saw like the tension with the brothers, where it wasn't just the nice demeanor. Jason was cutting weight, and Andrew was working on sparring for Nakatani, which I believe was maybe a week or two after. It was Lomachenko versus Haney, I believe was the card it was on.
Yeah.
And it was fun because it's like that was their, I wouldn't say competitive prime, but there was so much on the line for both brothers to both be champions. And it was just neat to see them. Maybe if you have questions, and Andrew Alex Winwood was also with him at the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, the weird thing when you're in the gym with high level fighters is, it's not as much what they're doing as it's the tension and like you could hear a pin drop. So it's like typically when I'm around the Maloneys, it's all fun and good. This was the first time I was around them where it's like, hey, can I film? And Tony's like, yeah, but wait a little bit and I'll tell you when. And it's like, that's when you know you're really in a camp, right? Is when like you can see, because they had a sparring partner and the guy was working on Nakatani, and I remember being told by someone like, yeah, when you pay the sparring partner, they have to move the exact way you want them to move. And then, you got another brother that's cutting, and it's like, it's pretty clear he does not want to talk. So you got normally casual, and it's the best way I can explain it was I'd gotten to know both guys, but it's almost like in the highest level compliment, it's almost like seeing people kind of naked, not naked within the clothes, but it's like completely vulnerable because you got one guy that's having to go to a random gym in the middle of nowhere to him and spar because that's how crucial the sparring sessions are. And then you got another brother who's never been in this gym. Oh, and by the way, guess who also was in the gym this day? I'm just remembering this.
Don't know.
Over all by himself, nobody looking at him, Brian Norman Jr. So the Moloney brothers and Brian Norman Jr. were shaken out, and Norman was in typical Brian Norman fashion, because I've gotten to deal with Brian a lot lately over the past years. He's just hitting a heavy bag all by himself. His dad's next to him. He's watching every single person getting a read on him, but he's just sticking to himself. And Brian Norman is a real old soul, and he was in there and nobody would have known where he was. And I remember that. And then at the end of the workout, I made sure that Steve Solis got a photo at the gym with all the Maloneys. And I went to Kinko's and I printed out the photo because the next day I was going back out for the weigh-in, and I made sure to drive it to the gym. And I'm pretty sure the photo's there, but I like that photo because it's like, both Moloney brothers, Australian world champions, basically at the end of the week, were in a Stockton, California gym. It might not mean much to people in Australia, but it's like for people where I'm from and vice versa, if a California or American came to Australia and trained as a world champion, I think you really need to savor those moments because it really is a moment where you're going somewhere you might not ever go again, and to take a photo of that, because that really is what a world champion is. So that's really what I remember. If you want any more details, I can try my hardest if you ask me a question, but that's my story, was kind of seeing them in the last seconds of that fight.
Yeah, damn, man, that's crazy. Yeah, what an amazing experience to be able to get that vibe. I've never met the Maloneys. I've sort of seen them at the amateurs.
We'll change that. We need to change that. We need to
One
change
day.
that. We need to get the Maloneys on your show. And I also remember sitting there ringside, and I'm trying to be objective, and I felt like he's winning the fight. And I remember most people on Media Row were scoring it for Astrolabia, and I felt like he had won it 7-5. And I remember just being confused. I'm like, am I biased? What is it? Because like I don't know. So I remember that was another moment where it's like it wasn't really a good fight, but it was a fight that I thought that he won.
Yeah.
And that's my memories. So Zach, it's getting to be past my bedtime. It's not past your bedtime, but why don't you tell people about your great show? You're one of my favorites. I listen whenever you drop a podcast, and you're a good friend too. So I just want you to shout.
Oh, I appreciate that, Lukie. Thanks, mate. Yeah, it's been awesome to sort of get to have some conversations with you over the last year and a half or so, mate. So I really appreciate that. It's the best thing about doing these type of things is being able to talk to people and sort of meet people virtually and sort of create that relationship. So no, it's been fantastic, mate. And I always take an invite from you on whatever platform you're working on, mate, to share some time with you is a huge compliment. So that means a lot to me. So yeah, thank you, mate.
It's not that big of a compliment.
It is, mate. It is. You know, it is for me. I'm just this guy on the other side of the world. You're reaching out to me. That means the world, mate. It truly does. So no, I appreciate your time, mate. And I'm a big fan of everything you do. I'm trying to follow in your footsteps, mate. I've told you that before in terms of the output, which I've hit a little bit of a roadblock at the moment. But we back on the train in the coming days for the next month. So yeah, I take you as a massive inspiration, mate. And like everyone else now who's listened or watched this, can't wait for that big nasty interview to drop. So that's my hopefully we get that before the year is out. A bit of an early Christmas present to boxing fans everywhere.
I
Lukie
hope
times
so.
big
I
nasty.
want to reach out. How cool would it be if I dressed just like him?
You got to get tatted.
Would that be disrespectful? But like if I did like the same outfit, but like we don't acknowledge that I'm dressed just like him.
It'd be the ultimate compliment.
Yeah, it's just like, hi, this is Lukie. I am Big Nasty's personal interviewer for this pay-per-view fight against Teremoana Jr. Big Nasty, how are you going to win this fight? We know it's tough to fight an Olympian, but your life has been filled with hardships. You've overcome a lot of things. You found success in rugby in different ways. How is this like all the successes you've ever had in your life? And then,
You're a pro, Lukie. That was perfect.
Yeah. They said, they say this Teremoana guy or whatever his name is, it hits really hard. What are your thoughts on his power? I'm still waiting for an interviewer.
You thought about this way too much, man.
No, I wish I had, but like
that's awesome.
I've really wanted. I remember there was a telecast once that I was a part of, which was like I was the second broadcast team. And the first broadcast team got a guy's name wrong. It was like it was Smith and he said Jones. So the standard was real high on that production. But I've always wanted to see like an in-ring interview where someone's like is just tired and they're like, so like how did it feel to knock out that guy or something? Like they don't even try to hide it. Because it's like you see these people and they're like, I just want to be a famous person holding the microphone. And like I've always just wanted to see like the guy that just is really phoning it in. Like he's like, man, I'm at a club show boxing thing. I'm not on the red carpet. I try to be an actor. So that's where that comes from.
Your first question to Big Nasty has to be just the standard. How was camp?
You gotta flip the script on it. It'd be like, why was this camp the most intense camp any heavyweight has ever had?
Yes.
How about this for a question to Big Nasty? I love the way we're ending is, what would Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, George Foreman, Moses Atama, and just throw one other random person in there, and Larry Holmes and Corey Sanders say about this training camp? If they were all put together, what would those guys say if they could talk about this training camp?
Oh, well, they'd be blown away, clearly.
And then I think I'd ask them another one. How important is cardio in heavyweight boxing? Like, are we doing a lot of wind sprints? Are we running? I've heard mixed things, so I want
Mate,
to know since
you
you're
get halfway through the second round into that third round into deep waters, mate. You better hope you got that cardio behind you.
Well, I'm curious. Once again, this is for the big nasty interview, but how important is swimming? Right? If you're always going to deep waters, is like aquatics a major part of training camp, right? Because like you have to get comfortable in uncomfortable places, as we all know, right? There's no losses, there's only lessons. But you have to get into the aquatic. I'd assume that like maybe is there any untraditional means? Does he swallow water? Does he put himself in like weird positions?
Might have a water
Swimming. Oh man, is there any ritualistic nature? Does he put a knife in the water bed and like there's levels of discomfort to go to the dark places, right? Because I'm sure he has to go to dark places in camp. So I just think that there's a lot to work with there. And I think that'd be a great interview. And I think the world really wants me to do that interview.
Well, mate, I bloody do more than anything in life. That is my number one dream for 2000.
My number one dream, and then Tim Tszyu, do a Tim Tszyu interview. So, like, you've had a pretty good career. What do you think about Big Nasty and some of these up and comers on this card? Obviously, you're like a legend, but like these young guys coming up, like anybody get your juices flowing. Middleweight, like, would you ever fight? I guess that'd be my question for Tim Tszyu. Like, would you ever fight like Canelo? Like, is that like a fight that you've thought deeply about? Just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, what?
Let's go. I need to get the whiteboard out, mate. Start writing all these questions down.
You know what? Like, I just feel like people already asked dumb questions, but like, this is a question I think about sometimes, and then the podcast will end. Like, what's the highest weight you think you could beat someone up at a world-class level? Like, I think I'm going to start asking fighters that. Like, how big do you think you could weigh in? And, like, is there a limit to the ass whooping at a world-class level? Like, do you think you could go up to heavyweight and put it on somebody? Like, I'd like to know that because he's a pretty macho guy. Like, with skateboarders, when they jump downstairs, they had like a formula. Most guys, like if they jump down 20 stairs, they could eyeball it and they'd be like, it's in the range. Like, is there like a methodology for this? Like, okay, he's got big shoulders. That could be so that's what I'd want to know from Tim Tszyu.
That is actually a great question to start asking people, Lukie. Because remember famously when Gervonta Davis claimed he could hit as hard as a decent cruiserweight?
Now, see, that is a good cop-out. Because how do we define decent? So, like, you just have to find a cruiserweight you hit as hard as, and you're like, see, told you, decent cruiserweight.
Exactly. So that is a great question.
We're not going to say top 10 or anything. It's like, yeah, decent, Yeah. But, okay, that's the show. Love having you on, Zach. Thanks
for having me, Lukie. Pleasure, mate. Thank you.